In the preface to his popular book, The Realm of the Nebulae, Edwin Hubble wrote, "In the field of cosmology, the writer has had the privilege of consulting Richard Tolman and Fritz Zwicky of the California Institute of Technology. Daily contact with these men has engendered a common atmosphere in which ideas develop that cannot always be assigned to particular sources. The individual, in a sense, speaks for the group." I would like to credit these men for doing something that is difficult to do, especially in a field as competitive as astronomy. They did not believe the universe was expanding, and they stuck to their guns and never wavered. This video will show that Hubble and his colleagues from Caltech were right all along. They believed that there existed a hitherto unrecognized principle of nature, which is actually responsible for the red shifting of the spectral lines of distant galaxies instead of an expanding universe. They never discovered that unrecognized principle. Fortunately, I stumbled onto this principle, and with Edwin Hubble's writings, I was able to piece together the full picture. I can say here that the unrecognized principle turns out to be the law of the conservation of angular momentum. Like Isaac Newton said, "If I have seen further than others, it is by standing upon the shoulders of giants." In the same way, I am standing on the shoulders of Edwin Hubble and his colleagues.
Historically, when we see the image of an atom, the electron is always close to the nucleus. This is done in order to fit the image onto the page, but nowhere are we told that it's not to scale. Because of this, we've been conditioned to believe that this is what an atom looks like if we could see it up close. In reality, the distance between the nucleus and the electron is so great that an accurate scale model of an atom can't fit onto a single page. Even when using the head of a pin to represent the nucleus, the electron, in order to be to scale, would be the size of a piece of dust and would be 42 feet away. This is important because if the nucleus and the electrons were actually as close as they're shown to be, the attraction between them would cause them to meet and self-annihilate. Thankfully, the great distance between the nucleus and the electrons prevents self-annihilation and hopefully will continue to do so far into the future. In the world of atoms, it takes a long time for an effect to manifest to the point where it becomes noticeable. Such an effect at the atomic level has been discovered and is the prime focus of this presentation. This newly discovered effect operates in accordance with a law of physics discovered by Isaac Newton, the law of the conservation of angular momentum, referred to simply as the conservation of momentum. The ultimate result of this law is to cause spectral lines to shift toward the blue end of the spectrum, which is the opposite of the Doppler effect, which causes the spectral lines to shift toward the red end of the spectrum. Not until now has the conservation of momentum been associated with the cause of redshift, even though Edwin Hubble and his colleagues from Caltech speculated on the existence of a hitherto unrecognized principle of physics as the cause of redshift, but they didn't recognize the conservation of momentum as being the actual principle that's responsible. The effect caused by the conservation of momentum provides a new explanation for redshift and is in direct opposition to the Doppler effect. The best way to explain this effect is to show a video of a figure skater executing a spin. As the skater spins, she simultaneously draws in her outstretched leg and raises her arms, which causes her rotation to increase to the point where she's spinning so fast she becomes a blur. The conservation of momentum operates at all scales, from atoms to galaxies. The attractive force between electrons and the nucleus is so weak, it's not even considered when atomic forces are being calculated. However, if given enough time, the effect caused by the conservation of momentum will manifest to the point to where it becomes noticeable. Such is the case of a galaxy that's 100 million light years away, where there's enough time for this effect to manifest. For the sake of simplicity, I've given this effect a nickname. I call it the Julien Effect. The hypotheses. At the top left, we have a hydrogen atom. Below that, a globe of the Earth, and below that, a spectrograph of the Sun. At the top right is a hydrogen atom. Below that, a galaxy, and below that is a spectrograph of that galaxy. We placed a brick wall in front of the galaxy to block its light from being seen from Earth. There's a shutter in the center which will release a small stream of light that we can follow as it makes its 100 million year journey to Earth. So, we imagine that it's now dark when we look in the direction of the galaxy. The audience will view this from an imaginary vantage point located far off to the side. The two hydrogen atoms are identical, as are the two spectrographs. The spectral lines found in our Sun will be the same as the spectral lines found in the galaxy. The spectral lines in both spectrums will be steadily shifting towards the blue end of the spectrum. This is caused by the conservation of momentum. This effect is not due to an expanding universe. In this hypothesis, the universe is non-expanding. The attraction between the nucleus and the electron causes the electron to draw ever so slowly closer to the nucleus, and accordingly, the wavelengths of the light that's emitted reflects this change. Wavelengths of light rely solely on the distance of the electron to the nucleus at the time the light is emitted. Since the distance of the electron to the nucleus is steadily diminishing, the wavelengths are steadily changing. This is what causes the spectral lines to shift towards the blue end of the spectrum. At the same time, the electrons, like the spinning skater, speed up as they draw closer to the nucleus. This is also caused by the conservation of momentum. So now we put this presentation into motion. We look at its spectrograph at the instant it was emitted. Its spectral lines will never change. We see that it's at the exact same wavelength as the galaxy that emitted it. The galaxy's spectral lines are perfectly aligned with the tiny stream of light, but that alignment lasts only for a short time. Although the wavelength of the tiny stream of light will not change, the wavelengths of the spectral lines of all the stars in all the galaxies in all the universe will steadily change due to the Julien effect that's caused by the conservation of momentum. Their spectral lines will continuously shift towards the blue end of the spectrum. In this thought experiment, this effect has been exaggerated to make it more noticeable. Look up at the slowly rotating atoms. You will soon notice that they are speeding up in their orbits, while at the same time, the electrons are drawing closer to the nucleus, just like the figure skater. All the atoms in the universe are simultaneously undergoing the same change, which is why the spectral lines of the galaxy and the Sun are always identical. This phenomenon, the Julien effect, is due to the conservation of momentum. Below, the light is arriving after 100 million years, and its spectrograph is compared to a spectrograph of the present-day Sun. In this top spectrograph, the wavelengths of the tiny stream of light didn't change, while in the bottom spectrograph, the wavelengths of the Sun have noticeably shifted towards the blue end of the spectrum, not the other way around. All the atoms in the universe are drawing closer to their nucleus, and at the same time, they are speeding up in their orbits. And one must conclude that the speed of light must also be speeding up accordingly. To say that the speed of light is universally speeding up is a bold statement, and is easily swept aside except for one thing. There exists overwhelming evidence that supports this statement, one example of which we will now present. The evidence. We've compared the galaxy spectrum to the Sun spectrum. We point out that both spectrums underwent the same change due to the Julien effect that's caused by the conservation of momentum. And we remind the audience that every atom throughout the universe is simultaneously undergoing the same change. This change cannot be demonstrated here on Earth. because any piece of experimental equipment that is constructed to measure this effect is itself made up of atoms and is itself undergoing the same effect, and therefore a zero result is always guaranteed. Using starlight from distant galaxies may be the only way for enough time to pass to allow the conservation of momentum to manifest to the point where it becomes noticeable. The farther away a galaxy is, the longer it takes for its light to arrive, so the more it will be blue shifted. This applies to any observer in the universe, no matter where in the universe that observer may be. Because of this, there's no longer a need for an inflationary period, since all of the arriving light is undergoing the Julien effect that's caused by the conservation of momentum, and not because of the Doppler effect. We've reset the board and we'll run it one more time. A tiny green light is placed to mark the halfway point between the galaxy and the Earth. A tiny stream of light is released. When it reaches the midway point, a second tiny stream of light is released. One would think that the first stream of light would reach the Earth at the same time that the second stream of light reaches the midway point, but that's not what happens. The first stream of light has not yet reached the Earth when the second stream of light passes the midway point. This is because all the electrons in the universe have had 50 million years to draw closer to their nucleus or speed up. So when the second tiny stream of light was emitted, it was traveling slightly faster than the first tiny stream of light. Please remember, we've had to greatly exaggerate this in order to show it. We chose quasar 3C279 as the perfect example because it's 5 billion light years away. The following video was created by using a 16-foot board constructed in my garage just for this purpose. Approximately every 2 years, from 1990 to 1998, NASA captured an image of quasar 3C279. The color has been added. The orange dot is believed to be a supermassive black hole at the center of the quasar. The green blob on the right side of the image is what's called a superluminous ejection of matter that is moving away from the quasar at faster than the speed of light. It should be pointed out that nothing is supposed to be able to escape from a black hole, and nothing can move faster than the speed of light. The most important thing about these 5 images are the sequence in which they were taken. The top image was photographed first, followed by images 2, 3, 4, with 5 being last. But to actually adhere to the law of gravity, the first event to occur would have been the bottom image. To put it simply, gravity draws matter together, and since the last green blob is the farthest away, we can safely conclude that out of the 5 images, it was the first event to occur. Then came image 4, image 3, image 2, and at the top, image 1 was last. Logic tells us that gravity draws objects together, but the dates of the images disagree. But according to the conservation of momentum, the newer light is traveling slightly faster than the older light, and with 5 billion years, there's plenty of time for the Julien effect to manifest to a point that can't be ignored. With this taken into consideration, we see how the newer light, over a period of 5 billion years, passes the older light to arrive first. So, literally, the images were photographed in the reverse order, but no one is aware of this because no one knows that the unrecognized principle, speculated to exist by Hubble and his colleagues, has been found, and it is the conservation of momentum.
It's not that the older light is getting tired, but that the newer light is moving faster.
Thank you for watching. My name is Michael Ruud. I made this discovery in 1984. The website is Blueshift, thenewredshift.com.